Hi everyone, my name is Siri Fields. I'm here to talk about GIMP, which is an image manipulation program that I use to create my covers and my Facebook banner, pretty much any kind of media that I need to promote my books. It's a free program. It's open source, that's why it's free, and I'll make sure to post a link underneath this tutorial so that you can get the program as well. So today the only thing I'm going to discuss is each of these tools in the toolbox options so that it doesn't look overwhelming, so that when you log in you don't think, oh my gosh, there's too much and I don't know where to even start. So first, if you do not have this, if you don't have the toolbox, if it's gone, you can get it back one of two ways. The first is you can go under Windows and recently closed Docs and click on it, and it should open everything up. However, if this is your first time using GIMP, you may not have this. So what you would do is you would go to New Toolbox, and it would pop up the new toolbox. You'll want to make that a little bit bigger so that you can see it. And then you're going to want to find your dockables, which is here. So what you're going to do is you're going to go back up to Windows and you're going to look under Dockables dialog. The dockables that you will want to use are the ones that I use primarily are Tool Options, Layers, Channels, and then I also use one called Brushes. Those are the primary ones that I use quite a bit. So you'll have all these other little open boxes. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to put them into your toolbox. The way that you do this is you click this tab. Do not click the top next to where the red cross is. It won't do anything. So you're going to click the tab that says Tool Options and drag it into your toolbox and drop it. And you're just going to keep doing that with the others until you have everything that you want in there. So that's your toolbox. Okay, now let's talk about the tools in the toolbox. Okay, the first is the rectangular select tool. It's pretty simple. All it does is it selects in a rectangular or a square form. If you need it bigger, then you click and you drag it to make it bigger. Click, click. The way you know that the selection is here is you'll see the ants marching around it. And it selects everything between the selection lines. Okay. The next tool is the ellipses, and it's just as it says. It creates an ellipses or a circle or even more of an ellipses. It's whatever you need. But it's circular, it's not square. The next tool I call a lasso, but on here it's called a free select tool. I call it a lasso because it looks like a lasso. And you can select, it just lets you select whatever you need to. And then to get it, the marching ants, you do it like that. And then that's what happens. Okay, the fuzzy select tool I don't use that much. I use it if I need to pick up lettering. For instance, that I might use it so that I can get the lettering on layers that have been merged together. Some graphic designers use it to grab some of the background, because what it does is when you click it, it selects one of the colors and then it goes based on the pixels surrounding that color, and it's based on this threshold that's given as to what it chooses. And they do this so that they can have kind of a smoky effect back here. I've never used it. I don't care for it that way because it's imprecise. So, but there's options with that if that's something that you need to look at. This is a select by color. It does exactly what it says it does, and that is you can go into your layer, and then you just press the color that you want selected, and then it selects every pixel that has that color in it, and it pulls it out. So you'll see this I use a lot, and we'll get into it when I start talking about putting book covers together, merging different photos together so that you can create a unique book cover. But this is the one that I use quite a bit, and it's a scissor select tool, and what it does is you start at one point, and as you select, it selects the pixels that make up that image. So it makes it a lot easier to select the face that you want to cut out so that it has a transparent background or whatever. But it's similar to the Lasso tool. Foreground I've never used. I just don't use it. Path tool, again, I've never needed it in all the years I've used GIMP. This is the color picker, and what it does is it allows you to select a color. And the way I use this is if I'm designing a book cover, and for instance, say I have this as the gold background for the book cover, and I want my lettering to be a lighter gold, then what I would do is I would use this color picker, and I might come up into this section and click it, and my color would be here, and then that would be the color that would show up in my text. So that's kind of how I use the color picker. If I need a contrasting color, or I want a color that complements the book cover, that's how I use the color picker. The zoom is like any other zoom. Zooms in, zooms out. Whoa. Why it did that, I don't know. Okay. This is the measure tool, measures distance and angles. I've never really used this. I know that you can use it if you want to make sure that your text is centered. So what you would do is you maybe would come up to the top, and then you would go all the way down and drop, and then you would see here on the lower left hand side of your screen where it says pixels. If you came here, you would see how many pixels it is from the top. And then maybe you want it to be centered, so you would end up doing whatever mathematical thing. I eyeball it, so I've never really used this. This is the move tool, and what this does is it moves your layer just from however you need it. Say you need this layer closer to the bottom because you want to add something up here, so you would just click and drag it down. That's the move tool. Okay, this is the alignment tool. So I use this a lot for like texts, or if I've got a whole stack of layers that I'm wanting to make sure are stacked evenly, I'll use it. So let's say you have a layer that's kind of off to the side, but you want it centered across the image better. So you might click the align tool and click in your layer, and then click Align Center so that it centers across all the layers. And that's basically what that does. This is a crop tool. It does exactly what it says it does. It crops stuff that you don't necessarily want. So let's say all I want is GIMP Basics tutorial right here. So I would click that. I would drag it from the upper left to the bottom right, and then I would, just like this, then I would hit enter, and then it cuts everything. So it's just like getting a haircut. It just crops it off. This is a rotate tool. It rotates the picture just like that. This is the scale tool. The scale tool, I call it also a resizing tool because you can make things bigger. Say you just want this, or you can make things smaller. When I scale it smaller, I have a tendency to make sure that the link is there so that it keeps the width and height kind of uniform. And that works really good on memes when I need to scale them down to fit better on Facebook and Twitter. Okay, then there is the shear tool. I've never used that. Perspective tool. This I use when I'm adding my books to, say, one of my memes that is advertising my my book, so I'll add the book cover to it, and the perspective tool kind of tilts it in. So if you're going to add a hardback that has the spine and you want to include the spine and the front cover, then this would be how you would do that, so that it looks it's got a little bit of depth to it. Let's see, this is the flip tool. It does exactly what it says it's going to do. It flips stuff around just like a mirror. That's the cage transformation tool. I've never used that, ever. Text tool, exactly what it says it's going to be. You can choose various texts, like screwball, haha, and the size pixel that you want, and you can just type it in. Paint fill or bucket fill is exactly what you would think. It goes by the foreground color. This is the foreground, that's the background. The white is the background, black is the foreground, and it fills stuff in for you. Oh, hey, that's kind of cool. The reason it's not filling the entire selection is because where I have selected fill similar colors, it won't fill the entire selection. It only fills based on what color I've picked. So that's that. The blend tool is exactly what it sounds like. It blends. It's better if you have something selected to blend. And then you can do, but we'll get more into that later. The pencil is similar to how it works in Paint. The same with the paintbrush, the eraser, the airbrush, all that. Now, this is probably one of the coolest tools, and I've used it quite a few times. It's a clone tool. The clone tool lets you copy a piece of your layer onto another piece of your layer. So for instance, let's say I want to copy GIMP basic tutorial at the bottom. So what I would do is I would click the clone tool, and I might bring the brush up a little bit so that you can see how this really works. You will, to use this, you hold down Control and then you click where your target is, what you want to clone, what you want to mirror or copy. So it puts a little dotted line here, so that's your starting point. Now let's say I want to come down here and I want GIMP Basics down here. So what it does, you'll move down here and then you'll click and drag your mouse, and it copies this for you, and it copies the background, it copies the text, it copies everything that's above. But the second you release your mouse, so I'm going to release my mouse, it jumps right back here, and so you have to start in the same area. But the bad thing is even if you start in the same area, you could be 1 or 2 pixels off. So if you're copying something, you're going to want to copy it fully before you release the mouse button. But that's what that does. The healing tool, I don't really have a good place to use this on here because I don't have a lot of pixels that are disproportionate. We'll get into that when I use it on the book covers. When you put images into other images and then into other images, sometimes the pixels don't always match. So you'll use this healing tool and you'll use these tools, the blur tool, the smudge tool, and the burn tool to help get the pixels to where they look even and it looks like the images belong together. So we'll get into those later. So that's it. That's how the tools in the toolbox work. And I will get more in depth as we use them. I'll explain how we use them on layers, the brushes, why paths to channels are important. Those are a little bit more advanced. This is strictly basics. This is strictly explaining the tools and giving you the opportunity to go in and play with your pictures or play with your photos or play with whatever you have to work with that gets you familiar with these tools. I am going to note, it is very important, if you are an indie author and you are making your own book cover, do not grab just generic pictures or photos or whatever off of the internet. Don't do this. That's copyright infringement and you'll get into a lot of trouble. Instead, you're going to want to use like Deposit Photos or Shutterstock or several other sites that have what are called royalty-free photos. You usually have to buy them. I use AppSumo.com and I usually buy the $49 for the 100 photo images from Deposit Photo whenever they run that sale. I think they just ran one a month or so ago. If you find a sale or something like that, especially with Deposit Photos, because they have some really amazing photos that you can choose from, you can get those and then they stockpile. You don't necessarily have to use them right then. So they go into your account and then you can use them a year from now or 6 months from now or whenever. It's the same with the music. Don't start slapping music down on trailers or on whatever and tying it with your book. Make sure that the music, if you do like a trailer for your book or you do any kind of deal with your book, Make sure that the music is also royalty free. Shutterstock has a really good selection, and then there are also some sites, and I'll make sure to note these sites again underneath this tutorial, that you can go to get free music that is royalty free, and you'll want to read each of those. They'll each come with like a little license, and you'll want to make sure that you can use them in the context that you're planning on using them. The other thing is fonts. Fonts, fonts that you use for your book cover. You're going to want to make sure that they are also within the license that you were planning on using them with. You can get a lot of free fonts on the internet, tons of free fonts on the internet. However, someone created those fonts, and they will have a copyright tied to them because they were created by somebody. So make sure that if you use them, that you're using them in the vein that the creator intended. Whether it's, most just want acknowledgement that it's their creation. So if you use them, you can acknowledge that where they came from within your cover page in your book. So I think that covers everything. Just be aware of where you get your images and your fonts and your music or whatever you're using. Just be very aware of that so that you're not caught a year or 2 years from now in a copyright infringement lawsuit. Okay, so now that all the serious talk is over, that's GIMP. I love GIMP. I'm a huge fan of GIMP, and I will be making some more tutorials. I'm actually going to recreate several of my book covers on here, and I will walk you through how I did it and how you can do it as well. So if you have any questions, please just type them in at the bottom or send me an email. I'll make sure to include my email address down there as well. And this has been fun, so I'm going to say have a great day.